I sat wrapped in 2 blankets, watching my own breath curl in the freezing air of my living room. My son had flipped the breaker again. "If you can't pay, you can't stay warm," he said, smirking from the hallway. I paid for this house. I paid for his life. And now I was begging the walls to hold in heat. That's when I stopped being his mother and started being a case number, the kind that ruins your credit for a decade. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Edna Grayson woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that screamed something was wrong. Her breath fogged in the air above her as she lay still in the twin bed, one quilt pulled tight around her chin, another tucked under her legs. Her knees ached from the cold. The old duplex walls groaned faintly with each gust of Minnesota wind, but the usual hum, the steady exhale of the furnace, was gone. She sat up slowly. The air bit her skin as she swung her feet to the floor. Her slippers felt like ice packs. Something had happened. She shuffled down the narrow hallway, one hand bracing the wall for balance, the other clutching her robe tighter. The thermostat in the living room was blank, dead. No blinking numbers, no soft click from the vent overhead, just a quiet so sharp it rang in her ears. She crouched beside the basement door, knees creaking as she gripped the cold brass knob. The wood of the door was frigid against her fingers. She opened it and peered down the narrow stairs. Darkness. She hadn't brought a flashlight, but she didn't need one. She'd lived here long enough to know the route by memory. Each step groaned under her weight as she descended. When she reached the bottom, she flicked the breaker panel open. The furnace switch had been flipped. She knew she hadn't touched it. The room smelled of dust and metal and something else, like spite. She flicked the switch back on and heard the faint whir of power. Back upstairs, she tried the thermostat again. Still nothing. She turned around and nearly jumped. Martin was standing in the hallway behind her, barefoot, wearing one of her old sweatshirts. He leaned against the doorframe like he'd been waiting. "Heat's off," she said, voice steady. Martin gave her that crooked smile, the one that never reached his eyes. "Yeah, well, you're behind on money again. Maybe it's time you figured things out without leaning on me." She stared at him, unblinking. "I haven't asked you for anything." "You live in my house," he snapped. "You eat food I buy. You use utilities I pay for. You're lucky I don't start charging you rent." From behind him, a voice floated in. Lana, smug and syrupy. "Think of it as practice for the nursing home. Bet they don't even let you control the thermostat there." Martin chuckled. Edna turned away without another word. No use fighting frost with fire. She walked back to her bedroom, wrapped herself in 3 layers, and crawled under the blankets like she was burrowing into herself. She didn't cry. Her hands trembled, but not from sadness, just cold and control. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Hours passed. She sipped lukewarm tea she'd made by heating water on the stovetop. Her fingers had turned red from handling the kettle. Her breath still fogged the air inside her own home. A sharp knock rattled the front door. Not Martin's lazy tap, not Lana's rhythmic fingernails. This was firm and impatient. Edna opened it a crack. Dolores Kincaid stood on the stoop, shoulders hunched against the wind, coat zipped to her chin, eyes blazing. Her gray curls poked out from under a knit cap, her gloved hand clutching a plastic grocery bag. "You look like a damn snowman," Dolores said, pushing past her. "Why is it freezing in here?" Edna closed the door behind her. "Furnace isn't working." Dolores narrowed her eyes. "Not working, or someone decided you don't need heat?" Edna hesitated. "Breaker was flipped." "Uh-huh," Dolores muttered, already storming into the hallway. "Where is he?" "Sleeping, maybe." Dolores dropped the bag onto the table. It clanked with canned soup and a small space heater. "Like hell he is. You sit. I'm plugging this in and calling my nephew. He knows someone at the city. This," she pointed around the room, "this is elder abuse, plain and simple." Edna's lip twitched. She didn't want to feel grateful. But she did. Dolores marched toward the outlet, grumbling about no good freeloaders and cold-hearted cowards. The heater clicked on with a hum, and warm air began to spill into the frigid room. Just as Edna settled into the chair, her phone lit up on the table. A text from Martin. This is what happens when you bite the hand that feeds. Edna's fingers hovered over the screen, but she didn't respond. Not yet. She just stared at the words until the glow faded and the room filled with the low, growing hum of something rising. Her resolve. The wind off Lake Superior howled like it was trying to peel the paint off the buildings. Edna sat stiffly in the passenger seat of Dolores's battered Subaru, gloved hands folded in her lap. A plastic bag filled with neatly stacked documents, bank statements, utility bills, yellowed envelopes with overdue notices, rested between her feet. Her breath clouded the windshield as Dolores turned into the parking lot of the Duluth Legal Aid Center. "Don't you dare change your mind now," Dolores muttered, killing the engine. "That boy needs to learn his leash don't reach this far." "I'm not changing anything," Edna said quietly, pushing the door open into the biting air. The center was small and nondescript, squeezed between a payday loan shop and a check-cashing place with bars on the windows. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed above a cramped waiting area with peeling linoleum and chairs that had seen too many winters. A receptionist with a headset waved them through after checking Edna's name on a clipboard. They walked down a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of old carpet and overboiled coffee. Aaron Bliss was already waiting. Late 40s, pressed shirt, sensible haircut. He stood when they entered, extending a hand. "Ms. Grayson, I'm Aaron. Please sit." Edna shook his hand with a firm grip. She sat down, resting her bag in her lap. Dolores stayed standing, arms crossed. Aaron adjusted his glasses, tapping a pen against a yellow legal pad. "I've reviewed your intake notes. Before we proceed, I want to hear it from you directly. In your words, what's been going on?" Edna didn't hesitate. "My son's been living in my home rent-free for years. Says it's his house, but I pay the rent. I paid for most of the furniture, the food, the bills." Her voice didn't tremble. It was clipped, deliberate. "He cut the heat last night, flipped the breaker, said it was a lesson." Aaron's pen froze mid-note. "He's used my debit card without asking, opened envelopes that weren't his. I think," she swallowed, "I think he's taken out credit in my name." Aaron set the pen down slowly. "That's called financial exploitation, and it's illegal. You're not alone in this, and you're not helpless." Dolores let out a small, satisfied grunt behind her. Aaron opened a drawer and pulled out a thick packet. "This covers revoking his access to your accounts, initiating a freeze on your credit, and setting up alerts on all your financial activity. It also includes an affidavit in case you decide to pursue fraud claims." He handed it over. Edna flipped through the pages, scanning lines like she was threading a needle. "I can't stop him from yelling," she said, eyes still on the paper. "But I can stop him from stealing." Her voice had a quiet edge now, cold steel, not sadness. She signed every line without hesitation. Aaron nodded. "I'll submit the identity theft affidavit today and request fraud flags with the 3 major bureaus. We'll also put your social security number on a protective list. That way, if anyone tries to open credit in your name, they'll hit a wall." Edna folded her hands again. "Good." Dolores leaned forward, her lips curling into a smile. "Told you he wasn't gonna like this call." Aaron didn't smile. He turned back to his computer, typing with focused precision. "He won't," he said. "He'll get a notification the next time he tries anything. A notice saying, 'This account is locked pending investigation.'" Edna reached down, adjusting the strap on her bag. "Let him read that." Aaron glanced up. "You've just taken back control, but the next steps matter even more. We'll keep things quiet on your end while I build out the legal groundwork. Don't engage with him. Don't warn him. Just keep documenting everything." Edna gave a single nod. "I've started a log. Dates, times, what he says, I'm writing it all down." "Perfect," Aaron replied. "We'll make that part of your affidavit." He turned his screen so she could see the confirmation. "Your fraud alert is active. First line of defense is up." Dolores clapped her hands once, sharp and triumphant. "Time to turn the tables." Edna allowed herself the faintest smile. "Feels like I already did." Just then, Aaron's office phone rang. He looked at the screen and paused. His brow furrowed. "Speak of the devil?" he murmured. "Looks like Martin's already calling my office line." Dolores smirked. "Well now, that didn't take long." Edna didn't flinch. She pulled her coat tighter and met Aaron's eyes. "Don't answer it." The silence was colder than the air. Edna stirred a chipped mug of tea slowly, her hands wrapped around the warm ceramic like it was a fragile ember. The kitchen clock ticked overhead, too loud, too steady. Outside, the snow flurried against the window in wind-driven sheets. Inside, the space heater Dolores had loaned her buzzed in the corner, filling just one room with bearable warmth. Lana's voice floated in from the hallway, sticky sweet with a sneer buried just beneath. "You playing hard to get now, Edna? Thought you liked pretending we were family." Edna didn't respond. She took a long sip of the tea, chamomile with a slice of lemon, letting it scald her throat slightly. The pain felt cleaner than Lana's presence. "You're real quiet these days," Lana continued, poking her head into the kitchen. "Gonna stay like that forever?" Edna set the mug down gently. "If you're not here to cook or clean, the kitchen's not yours." Lana scoffed. "Someone woke up with a little fire under her shawl." "I woke up," Edna said plainly, not looking at her. "That's all." She turned her back, slowly and deliberately. Lana huffed and retreated. 10 minutes later, Martin exploded through the front door like a blizzard with fists. "What the hell did you do, Ma?" Edna didn't flinch. She was spooning oatmeal into a bowl, calm and methodical. "I go to check our online bill pay, everything's locked. Says there's a fraud alert. Then I call the bank and they say you reported suspicious activity." His voice cracked, outrage tainted with disbelief. Edna set the spoon down. "I did." Martin blinked as if she'd struck him. "What is this? Some sort of punishment? You think you're going to teach me a lesson?" "I think I'm done letting you teach me yours." His fists curled. "You've forgotten how much I've done for you." "I remember exactly how much." He pointed a trembling finger at her. "You better fix this. You're gonna respect me or—" She stepped past him without a word, oatmeal bowl in hand. Didn't touch him, didn't even look him in the eye, just walked down the hall, opened her bedroom door, and shut it behind her like closing a vault. Inside, she set the bowl on the nightstand and pulled her notebook from the drawer. She wrote in clean, tidy cursive, "January 10th, 3:42 p.m. Martin entered yelling, "Accused me of financial sabotage, threatened consequences, no physical contact, witness, Lana." She flipped back to previous pages, each one dated, timed, methodical. The log was growing, and so was her clarity. Her cell buzzed. "Aaron," she answered in a whisper. "Don't engage," he said. "I know it's hard, but silence is strategy. Let the paper trail speak louder than your voice." "I'm logging everything." "Good. Keep it steady. This is the part where they escalate. Let them. You're not alone." She hung up and tucked the notebook back into the drawer, locking it this time. A knock came at her bedroom door, gentler this time. "Edna?" Dolores's voice. She opened it. Dolores stepped inside with a second space heater tucked under one arm and a bag of groceries under the other. "Brought another one. Told my nephew what's going on. He said to keep the receipts and keep safe. You okay?" Edna nodded. "I will be." They set the heater up by the window. The warm air filled the room slowly, pushing back the frost clinging to the corners of the glass. Edna pulled a blanket over her lap, hands steady now, mind sharp. "You want me to stay a while?" Dolores asked. "No," Edna said gently. "I need to hear them without reacting." Dolores nodded, eyes flinty. "You want me to accidentally spill coffee on his Xbox? Just holler." Edna almost smiled. "Not yet." They shared a long look. Then Dolores left, closing the door softly behind her. Minutes passed. The heater hummed. The tea cooled. From the hallway came Lana's voice again, smug, conspiratorial. "She's planning something. I don't like how calm she is." And Martin's answer, low and vicious, "Then maybe it's time I remind her who's in charge." Edna reached for her pen. The knock came just after 9. Edna was already dressed. Not fancy, just clean slacks, a thick cardigan, and the boots she only wore when someone official was expected. She opened the door to find a woman in uniform standing on the porch, snow flurries clinging to the brim of her Duluth PD beanie. "Ms. Grayson?" the officer asked, her voice calm, clipped. "Yes." I'm Officer Carla Dent. We got a referral from legal aid regarding a potential financial exploitation case. May I come in? Edna stepped aside. Yes, ma'am. Officer Dent entered and shook off the snow. Early 30s, maybe younger, with eyes that had seen too much for her age, no nonsense in her posture but not cold either. She didn't look at Edna like she was fragile. She looked at her like she mattered. I'd like to speak with you alone first, Dent said, glancing toward the hallway. They're still asleep, Edna replied. But yes, please, kitchen's this way. Dent followed her in, pulled out a small notepad and a slim digital recorder. Permission to record? Go ahead. Edna sat down, folded her hands. Where would you like me to start? Wherever feels right. She began quietly, the way someone reads a recipe for something they've cooked too many times, the shut-off heat, the flipped breaker, Martin's threats, Lana's comments, the documents she'd handed to Aaron Bliss, the notebook, the silence, the space heaters. Her voice didn't shake, not once. Dent listened, nodding occasionally, asking precise, well-placed questions. When Edna mentioned the suspicion of identity theft, Dent's brows drew together. Do you have physical evidence? Not yet, but Aaron's investigating. He said 2 accounts might already exist in my name. Okay. Dent stood. I'd like to inspect the thermostat. Edna led her to the hallway wall. The thermostat was still blank, wires jutting slightly from behind the plate. Dent leaned in, snapping photos from multiple angles with her department-issued phone. Breaker panel? In the basement. Edna flicked on the light and led her down the narrow stairs. Dent crouched by the panel, logging more photos and quietly muttering the breaker labels under her breath. The furnace switch was on now, but the signs of recent tampering were obvious. They returned upstairs to find Martin standing shirtless at the end of the hall, rubbing his eyes like a kid caught skipping school. What the hell is this? He barked. Officer Dent didn't flinch. You're Martin Grayson? Who's asking? Officer Dent, Duluth Police. I'm here following up on a complaint. His face darkened. Complaint? This is my damn house. No, sir, Edna said quietly behind her. It's not. You called the cops on me? He snapped. Seriously, Ma? Dent stepped forward, placing herself squarely between them. Mr. Grayson, I'm conducting a formal investigation into elder financial abuse and intentional endangerment. I'd advise you to lower your voice. He scoffed, arms crossed over his chest. This is a joke. Dent turned to Edna, calm as ever. Do you have a point of contact for your legal representation? Yes, Edna said, already retrieving the business card from her cardigan pocket. Aaron Bliss. Dent took the card, slid it into her folder. Thank you. Just then, Lana shuffled into the hallway, pulling on a sweater, eyes puffed with sleep and suspicion. You're making this bigger than it is, she muttered, half to Edna, half to Dent. Officer Dent didn't turn. She continued writing. Martin, Lana hissed. We don't need more trouble. Then tell your cop friend here to get out of my face. Dent snapped her notepad shut. You'll both be hearing from me formally. Today was just documentation. What comes next is up to you, and how much worse you want this to get. She handed Edna a white carbon copy of the form she'd filled out. This is the official incident report, case numbers at the top. I'll be contacting legal aid directly. Keep logging everything. I'll be back. Edna nodded, eyes clear. Thank you, officer. Dent paused at the door. You're doing the right thing. Then she was gone. Martin stood frozen in the hallway. The silence now wasn't peaceful, and it wasn't Edna's. It was his. Martin stood at the kitchen counter with his laptop open, muttering to himself as he jabbed at the keyboard. The furnace was humming now, only because Lana had pitched a fit, but the air in the house was still ice-thin, tense with unfinished arguments. Lana paced behind him, arms crossed over her hoodie. Did you do it yet? I'm doing it, Martin snapped. You don't just snap your fingers and get a card in the mail. You said her credit was clean. It was before she got all lawyered up. He typed faster. Name, date of birth, social security number, his mother's, the one he'd memorized years ago filling out her Medicare forms. He hit submit. A loading bar, a long pause, then a flash of red text. Application declined. Identity flagged for fraud. Please contact our security team. What the hell? He muttered. Lana leaned over his shoulder. What do you mean, declined? He clicked again, then again, the message unchanging. She locked it. She locked everything, he growled, slamming the laptop shut. Lana snatched the envelope off the table, the one they'd been waiting for from Mid-North Credit, and tore it open. Inside was a denial letter, cold and clinical. We regret to inform you that due to security flags and prior suspected fraud on this account, your request has been denied. Lana hurled it across the room. You said she wouldn't have the guts. Martin's jaw tightened. She didn't do this alone. That damn lawyer's behind it. From her room, Edna heard the crash, the shouting. She didn't move. Her fingers were steady as she folded a notarized affidavit of identity theft into an envelope marked for Aaron Bliss. The notary public at the courthouse had been brisk and kind. She'd signed without hesitation, eyes clear, posture proud. Now it sat in her outbox like a blade waiting to drop. Her phone buzzed. Aaron's voice came through crisp. Just got confirmation on 2 credit cards opened last year in your name, both maxed out and in collections. Edna exhaled through her nose. Figures! I've submitted civil complaints with the credit bureaus and the Federal Trade Commission. We're also preparing criminal fraud notices for the county prosecutor. Thank you, she said, her tone flat but resolute. I want a full freeze on everything tied to my name. You've got it. She hung up and reached beneath her bed, pulling out the fireproof box Dolores had given her. Inside were her passport, birth certificate, insurance cards, every essential document, now sealed in thick plastic sleeves. She checked each one again, then snapped the lock shut. A knock tapped against her door. Come in. Dolores stepped inside, snow still melting off her boots. She held out a coffee tin. Not coffee, she said. Cash. $1,700 I've been squirreling away since Frank passed. You'll stash it in your spot, not the bank, in case they try to cut off anything else. I can't take— You're not taking, Dolores interrupted. You're protecting. There's a difference. And your son's not gonna learn it anytime soon. Edna nodded, lifting the lid. Neatly rolled bills, all 10s and 20s. Dolores reached into her coat pocket and handed over 2 laminated copies of Edna's driver's license and social security card. Printed at the library under my account, just in case. Edna set everything on the desk beside her growing evidence pile. You think he knows he's already lost? She asked softly. Dolores tilted her head. Not yet, but he's starting to smell the smoke. Down the hall, another shout. A thud. A slammed door. Martin's voice, low and venomous. She thinks she's clever. Just wait. Edna picked up her pen, opened the notebook again. January 12th, 4:08 p.m. Application attempt failed. Screaming ensued. Lana present. Threatening tone. Suspect retaliation brewing. She drew a small star next to the word retaliation. The heater ticked once, then clicked louder than usual. Outside, the mail truck rolled past. Inside the mailbox, a second denial letter, this time from a different bank. And tucked in between the folds of the envelope, unnoticed by Lana, a plain white card addressed to Edna Grayson, confirmed fraud victim notification. The call came at 8:07 a.m., just as the sky turned from black to steel gray outside Edna's window. Good timing, Aaron said on the other end. I just killed a loan application. Edna sat up straighter in her chair. Another one? Different bank, submitted 2 days ago. Same name, your social, fake email, new address. His, not yours. But your affidavit? Nailed it to the floor. Will it show up on my credit? Not anymore. I submitted suppression notices this morning, and I've escalated your case with the state's Financial Crimes Task Force. They'll track every attempted application moving forward. We've got enough now to open a full financial abuse file. Edna smiled, small, quiet, but it reached her eyes. A hard knock shook the walls a moment later, followed by Lana's unmistakable wail. You think this is funny? You're ruining our future. Edna didn't flinch. She stepped out into the hallway to find Lana storming toward her, one boot half-zipped, her hair sticking up like she'd slept through a wind tunnel. You got some nerve, Lana seethed. He was approved. The money was on the way. And now it's gone. Because of your damn lawyer and your little pity games. Martin stood in the doorway behind her, saying nothing, just watching with glassy, tired eyes. The panic in him wasn't loud anymore. It was sinking in deep, somewhere under his skin. Edna folded her arms. It wasn't your money. Lana threw up her hands. It was a consolidation loan, to fix the credit cards. Your credit cards. Edna reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out her notebook. She didn't speak, just flipped to the next blank page and started writing. Lana's face flushed red. Are you serious? You're writing right now? You can't even defend yourself? Edna wrote slowly, January 13th, 8:13 a.m. Lana screamed about loan loss, called it our future, blamed me for blocking theft. Martin present, silent, tone, hostile. She finished the line, then looked up with the calm of someone anchoring a ship during a storm. Lana made a disgusted noise and turned, stomping away. Martin stayed where he was, watching Edna with something harder to read, resentment laced with something new, fear. Dolores showed up 20 minutes later with 2 steaming cups of diner coffee and a long, narrow box under her arm. What's that? Edna asked, accepting the cup. Dolores thumped the box down on the kitchen table and pulled out a small porch security camera. Best Buy sale. Weatherproof, night vision, motion detection. You mount it above the front door, hook it to Wi-Fi, and everything uploads to the cloud. I wouldn't know where to start. My nephew will install it this afternoon. I already called him. Edna didn't argue. She just stared at the sleek black lens, imagining it blinking back at her son the next time he tried to raise his voice at her door. By noon, Aaron texted, starting draft on restraining paperwork, dual purpose, asset protection and domestic safety, Officer Dent looping in today. That line made her pause. Domestic safety, that's what they were calling it now. But the thing that surprised her most was how right it sounded. Officer Dent returned that evening, no knock this time, just a crisp rap of knuckles and her badge flashing in the porch light. She stood by the open door, gloves tucked into her belt. We're opening an official financial exploitation investigation on your son, she said. We'll need full documentation of what's been filed so far. Aaron already sent most of it, just confirming your cooperation. Yes, Edna said, whatever you need. Dent nodded, then looked past her toward the hall. Have there been any threats or property damage? Not yet. Keep that camera on. Keep logging, and if anything escalates, anything, call me directly. She handed over a business card with her cell written in ink. That number doesn't go to dispatch. Edna held the card tight. She closed the door after the officer left and looked out the frosted window. Martin stood by the driveway, coatless, barefoot, phone to his ear. Lana was behind him, pacing. Edna watched his lips move, then she saw it. He looked up and pointed directly at her window. It started with the porch light shattering at 2:17 a.m. Edna heard the pop, then the clatter of glass raining down the front steps. She didn't scream, didn't move, just opened her notebook in the dim glow of her desk lamp and wrote it down. January 14th, 2:17 a.m. Front light shattered. Suspect, Martin. No visual confirmation. Check camera. By dawn, the security footage had uploaded. Clear as daylight. Martin in a hoodie, a snow shovel in hand, swinging up at the fixture with all the grace of a teenager vandalizing Halloween decorations. Dolores was at her door before sunrise with her coat still unzipped and a thermos of coffee steaming in hand. You're not gonna believe this, she said, breathless. You're on Nextdoor. What's a Nextdoor? It's like Facebook, but angrier. Listen, someone down the block saw Martin stomping around last night and uploaded your porch cam footage. Tagged it. Man caught breaking his own mother's property after freezing her out. People are furious. She pulled out her phone and turned it to Edna. There it was. Grainy night footage. Martin's face turning toward the camera as the light above shattered, followed by a comment thread 300 posts long. Words like, disgusting, arrest him already, and I shoveled her walk last winter. She's sweet as pie were being flung like confetti. By noon, the post had gone semi-viral across Duluth's small social media bubble. One local blog reposted it with a brutal headline, Elder abuse in the cold, Duluth man shamed after video emerges of mother's vandalized home. Lana tried damage control by early afternoon. Dolores showed Edna the post while they sat in her living room, the space heater humming and coffee thick with powdered creamer. "She tagged you," Dolores muttered, scrolling. "Here, my partner's mother has been emotionally manipulative and spreading false accusations to ruin our lives. Please respect our privacy while we navigate these unfair attacks." Edna blinked. "That's rich." "Oh, honey, the comments aren't buying it." She wasn't wrong. Replies poured in fast. "Then why's your boyfriend breaking her lights?" "I work at the co-op. She always brings her own bags and stacks coupons like a saint." This reeks of guilty conscience. Meanwhile, Aaron called that evening with a satisfied tone Edna had come to recognize. "I've archived the video, screenshots of all related posts and timestamps," he said. "That post from Lana qualifies as public defamation. Even better, people are publicly countering her narrative, which makes the whole thing harder for them to spin in court." "Will it help?" "Absolutely, especially for the restraining order." Dolores set her phone down with a huff and walked over to the window, peeking through the blinds. "Your boy's out there pacing like a dog with a broken leash." Edna didn't get up. She sipped her tea, notebook in her lap. "I'm not afraid of being talked about anymore," she said. Dolores turned. "You sure?" Edna smiled faintly. "Let them talk. I've got proof." There was something liberating about that moment. Edna realized she didn't need to defend herself anymore. The story wasn't just hers now. It had broken loose, spilled into the streets, leaked into phones and blogs and inboxes, and it was Martin's face, not hers, that was being passed around like a warning. Just then, a knock at the door. Edna stood slowly, steady in her steps, and opened it. Officer Dent. "I just filed misdemeanor vandalism charges," Dent said, pulling off her glove and handing Edna a folded printout. "Camera footage makes it airtight. DA's reviewing now." Edna scanned the paper. "I thought we'd have to fight longer." Dent's mouth twitched. "Not when the internet does half the work." Then her face turned serious. "There's more." Edna's chest tightened. "What kind of more?" Dent glanced over her shoulder, then leaned in. "There's chatter. Martin might be planning to move money, fast. Aaron flagged something in your case file. He'll call you tonight." Behind her, down the street, Edna saw Martin's truck engine start. He wasn't leaving. He was trying to beat the clock. The kitchen table hadn't been this cluttered since the Christmas Martin forgot to show up. Only this time the mess was intentional. Receipts, bank statements, old grocery lists, overdue notices, all arranged in tidy little piles. Edna wore her reading glasses low on her nose, a pencil tucked behind one ear, and a yellow notepad in front of her, sectioned like a battlefield. "Utilities, past due balance plus reconnection fees," she murmured, scribbling. "Groceries ruined when the fridge shut off, $57 give or take." Dolores sat across from her with a calculator and a box of paper clips. "Your memory's a damn ledger. How do you remember all this?" "I was a seamstress for 30 years. If I miscounted a zipper, someone's dress didn't close on prom night." They worked without music, just the tick of the wall clock and the wind curling around the window panes. Dolores passed her a new stack. "These are from last March. Withdrawal slips. You told me you were short that month, remember?" Edna nodded. "He said the rent had gone up. Took the difference from my account. It hadn't gone up at all." Click, pencil down. Edna wrote, "March, unauthorized withdrawal, $125. By noon, the table was full. Her neat columns tallied up lost food, late fees, stolen checks, bounced auto-pays, even the cost of the security camera. And beside it, in a separate folder, were notes Aaron had asked her to make. Nights she hadn't slept, days she'd skipped meals to avoid conflict, prescriptions she'd rationed when Martin said the copay could wait. Emotional damages, Aaron called it. Edna called it survival math. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail alert. No number. But she played it anyway, on speaker. Lana's voice cracked like a windshield under pressure. "Edna, hi. Look, I know things got out of hand. I think, maybe, we all just need to sit down and talk this through. No lawyers, no cops. Just talk, like family. We're not bad people, you know. We just Things got tight. I never meant for it to go this far. There was a long pause. Then, please, let's fix this. Dolores snorted. Fix this? Now that her name's all over local news and Martin's got charges breathing down his neck? Edna didn't say anything. She just pulled out her phone, hit share, and sent the recording to Aaron with one word. Documented. Not 10 minutes later, Aaron called. That voicemail is gold, he said. She admitted tension, acknowledged guilt, and tried to manipulate you into bypassing legal counsel. I'll add it to the package. We're in strong territory now. What's next? Dent just texted me. The restraining order's been approved by the judge. Emergency status goes into effect immediately. You'll get physical copies tomorrow. Edna's hand trembled slightly as she wrote it down. Restraining order. Real. Filed. Approved. She stared at the word immediately like it was a door unlocking. A knock came at the back door. Firm, quick, not tentative. Dolores peeked out the side window. It's Officer Dent. Edna opened the door. Dent stepped inside, her boots still crusted with snow. Wanted to tell you in person. It's official. Your son is legally barred from contact, physical presence, phone calls, third-party communication. I've got the temporary order here, signed. She handed it over, the legal stamp still damp on the page. You're not alone anymore, Dent said. Let him try something now. Edna nodded. Thank you. No, ma'am. Thank you, Dent replied. Not many people follow through this far. As she turned to leave, Edna asked, Do you think he knows? Oh, Dent said, glancing over her shoulder. He knows. Later that night, Edna sat by the window, journal open, columns totaled. $3,894.17, documented financial damages. 3 police visits, 1 restraining order, 1 neighborhood that now knew exactly who she was and exactly what he'd done. The porch light was fixed now, and under it, Dolores had placed a motion-activated sign she ordered from the hardware store. This property is monitored and protected. Edna sipped her tea, flipped her notebook shut. Then her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Lana. It was Martin, blocked caller. 1 voicemail. She tapped play, and all it said, his voice gravel-thick, angry, scared, was, You think you've won? This isn't over. The Duluth County Courthouse wasn't grand, just a block of aging concrete with too much salt on the steps and fluorescent lights that buzzed like irritated hornets. But on that morning, the courtroom itself felt heavy, not with history, with eyes. Edna walked in beside Aaron Bliss, spine straight, jaw set, wearing her navy wool coat and the pin her husband gave her the year Martin was born. She didn't need armor. Her people had already shown up. Dolores sat in the second row, lips tight and eyes bright. Behind her were 5 neighbors from the duplex block. Her church deacon, one of the librarians who used to help Edna print coupons on Saturdays. The retired janitor from the credit union who brought a thermos of tea and passed it to her with a nod. They were there not out of curiosity, but for her. Martin was already seated with a public defender and a mouthful of teeth he kept grinding. Lana sat behind him in cheap business attire, trying to look wholesome and avoid eye contact. The bailiff called the hearing to order. Aaron stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, we're here today to pursue a permanent restraining order and formal damages due to a sustained pattern of financial exploitation, psychological manipulation, and property intimidation against my client, Ms. Edna Grayson. He paused. And we are prepared to prove that Mr. Martin Grayson abused both his mother's finances and her trust with deliberate malice. Martin scoffed, loud enough to echo. His lawyer whispered something sharp. Martin sat back in his chair, lips pressed shut. Aaron didn't blink. Let's start with the paper. He passed the judge 3 thick folders. These include documented withdrawals, screenshots of fraudulent applications, identity theft affidavits, and video evidence of property vandalism. There is also a sworn statement from Officer Carla Dent verifying multiple incidents of concern. Edna watched Martin's jaw work as the judge flipped through pages. The stack looked heavier in the courtroom than it ever had in her hands. Maybe because here every page had weight. Every number told the story of what had been taken, not just in dollars, but in dignity. Aaron turned toward her. "Ms. Grayson, please take the stand." She rose. Her feet felt steady, her voice stronger than she expected as she was sworn in. Aaron kept the questions clean, direct, methodical. "What is your monthly income?" $1,203, Social Security. "And did you give your son access to your financial accounts?" "Not formally. He found ways in. I never signed over control." "Did he ever ask?" He told." Aaron paced slowly, letting her words settle. "And how long did this go on before you sought help?" Edna exhaled. "Almost 3 years? And why now?" She looked toward Martin. "Because I couldn't breathe in my own home anymore, because the furnace went quiet, and the silence told me I had to do something, or I'd freeze more than my body." A hush rippled through the gallery. Lana shifted in her seat. When her turn came, her voice shook under cross-examination. Aaron didn't rush. He was surgical. "Did you ever use Ms. Grayson's personal information without consent?" No, I mean Martin handled bills, but are you aware of 2 credit cards opened using Ms. Grayson's social security number and date of birth?" Lana blinked. "He told me she co-signed." "Did you see her sign anything?" "No." Aaron turned to the judge. "No further questions." Then, he pulled out his final exhibit, a printed screenshot of a text from Martin, seized from Edna's phone records and validated by timestamps. He handed it to the judge, then, reading aloud, "She's too dumb to fight this." Martin leapt to his feet. "That was out of context." His lawyer grabbed his arm. "Sit down, now." But the damage was done. The judge lifted a brow, then turned the page. The silence was volcanic. Aaron looked to Edna. She nodded. Barely. Outside, wind battered the windows. Inside, a new voice cracked the stillness. "Court will recess for final deliberation. Return in 30 minutes for ruling." As Edna stepped off the stand, Dolores caught her eye from the gallery, and for the first time in years, Edna smiled in a courtroom. But then, her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Blocked number. Again. She silenced it, but the screen flashed a preview text from an unknown number. "You think you've won. Court's not the end." It didn't take 30 minutes. The judge returned in 23. Restraint order, granted. Emergency damages, approved. Trial date for civil claims, set. The gavel cracked once, just once, but it echoed like thunder through Martin's carefully constructed delusions. Edna didn't look at him on her way out. She didn't need to. He looked small enough already. By the time she reached the courthouse steps, her phone buzzed again, this time with a name she welcomed, Officer Carla Dent. "Edna," Dent said, crisp as the wind off the lake. "The DA has officially opened a review on the criminal side. 3 charges are on the table: identity theft, elder exploitation, and fraudulent acquisition of credit." Edna exhaled, slow and steady. "And they'll stick?" "They're not speculative," Dent replied. "They're verified." Later that afternoon, Aaron's voice joined the wait. "We're going dual track," he said. "Civil trials locked in, but now the DA's in. We'll coordinate both timelines. I'm staying on for both." Edna nodded, pen scratching across her notebook as he spoke. She didn't interrupt, not until he paused. "Lana's trying to make contact," he added. "Her lawyer floated a soft deal offer, said she's willing to testify in exchange for immunity." "Should we take it?" Aaron didn't answer right away. "I told them no." "Why?" "Because she didn't just watch it happen, she benefited from it, lied about it, played victim online, and she never said sorry, to you or to anyone." Edna looked out the window. Snow had started again, soft and hypnotic, falling in swirls around the porch camera. "Good," she said. "This isn't just for you anymore, Edna," Aaron added. "This is for every older adult they think won't fight back." She said it out loud this time. "I know." By Friday, the second judge on the docket reviewed Edna's financial statements and froze every known asset tied to Martin's name, pending criminal proceedings. What little remained in his name was now flagged. Vehicles, shared utilities, even his gas card account. Dolores read the order aloud in Edna's living room, glasses perched halfway down her nose. "Emergency asset protection granted until resolution of case." "That's legal speak for Martin just lost his toys." Edna smiled behind her mug. Hope he kept the receipts. That same day, across town, Martin arrived 10 minutes late to his job at Twin Pines Storage. His manager, a weary man who mostly ignored drama, was waiting in the break room. "Hey," he said, holding up a large manila envelope. "Guy in a suit just dropped this off. Told me to give it to you." Martin frowned, opened it. Inside, a subpoena. The words, "State of Minnesota versus Martin Grayson," stared back at him in bold type. He barely had time to process before his manager added, "Also, HR got a call from someone at the courthouse. They don't want legal mess near client data. You're done here." Martin started to protest, but the man was already walking away. The envelope slipped from his hands and hit the floor like a verdict. That night, Edna stood at her window again. The same streetlight buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the yard. She could see the outline of Martin's truck parked crooked in the driveway, snow gathering on the windshield, unmoved for hours. Her notebook sat on the windowsill. Open. She added one line, January 19th, 6:34 p.m. Martin terminated from employment. Subpoena served, charges filed. Then she wrote underneath it, carefully, deliberately, "The system saw him." For the first time. Her phone buzzed. Not a call this time. A screenshot. Aaron had forwarded something from the court docket system. Criminal trial date. Scheduled. People versus Martin Grayson. Status. Active. Dolores texted immediately after. "You did it." Edna stared at the screen a long moment. But before she could reply, a message came through from an unknown number. No words. Just an image. Her duplex. Taken from inside a car. Parked across the street. By Monday, Martin and Lana's lease was unraveling like a sweater caught on barbed wire. They hadn't paid January's rent. They couldn't access any of the frozen accounts Martin had once taken for granted. And now the utility bills, gas, electric, water, were all bouncing back unpaid. Because Edna had finally called the companies and asked the only question that mattered, whose name is on the account? And when they told her hers, she took a breath and said what she should have said years ago. Remove him. As of today, he is no longer authorized to live here. The formal eviction notice was taped to the inside of the front door on January 23rd. 2 pages, signed and notarized. It was civil, swift, and cold. Lana's scream echoed up the stairwell. Dolores and Edna listened from the sidewalk, sipping thermos coffee and saying nothing. Martin appeared a moment later, face red, paper in hand. "You think you can just erase me? This house is mine." Edna didn't move. It never was. "Where am I supposed to go?" She finally turned. "That's no longer my problem, Martin." Officer Dent showed up 15 minutes later in uniform. "By city order, this residence is no longer your legal dwelling," she said, stepping up onto the porch. "You have 72 hours to vacate. If you make us come back with enforcement, we will." Martin opened his mouth, then closed it. It was the first time Edna had ever seen him truly speechless. Lana shoved a box of cords into a plastic tote and muttered, "This place was a dump anyway." Edna turned and walked back inside. By Thursday, the U-Haul arrived. Neighbors watched from porches and windows, arms folded and jaws tight. Some of them filmed. Most just glared. Dolores stood beside Edna on the front steps. "Kinda poetic," she said, eyes on the tailgate swinging open. "Like watching a parasite lose its host." They watched Martin haul out a cracked TV, a box labeled Xbox plus cable, and a sagging bag of clothes. Lana loaded her makeup cases into the passenger seat without a word. Edna held the signed order in her hand the whole time, tucked against her side like a boarding pass, not to leave, but to stay. Stay for the first time on her own terms. "Where do you think they'll go?" Edna asked quietly. "Somewhere cold," Dolores said. "If the universe has any poetry left in it." When the U-Haul finally disappeared down the road, Edna exhaled and turned back to her door. And that's when she saw them. 3 of her neighbors, Mr. Holmes with his walker, Elise from 2 doors down, and Janelle from the corner, each standing at the edge of her lawn with potted flowers in hand. "Thought we'd help brighten things up," Janelle said, smiling gently. She placed a terracotta pot of tulips beside the porch steps. Edna blinked, unsure how to respond. You helped us, Mr. Holmes added, voice raspy. Now let us help you. Dolores clapped her hands. All right, folks, let's get these planted before the ground hardens again. They set to work. Edna didn't speak. She just watched as each pot was gently tucked into soil or set beneath the windowsill. Yellow, pink, white, quiet color returning to a place that had been gray for far too long. Inside, Aaron emailed a new file. Drafted, civil restitution package, $11,302.41, pending approval from court. He texted a few minutes later, "We'll push for full damages plus recovery of legal fees." "You're winning, Edna." She replied with one word, almost. Then her phone buzzed again. A blocked number. She hesitated, breath catching. She tapped play. It was Lana. Her voice was low, breathless, panicked. "I'm warning you. If you don't drop this, Martin's going to make it right himself." A beat, then a whisper. "He's not stable anymore." Edna froze. Dolores saw the change on her face. "What?" Edna handed her the phone. Dolores listened, then looked up. "Time to finish this?" Edna didn't reply. She stared at the phone for a long time after Lana's voice cut out, panicked, broken, and worse, honest. But the warning had no power now, not because it wasn't real, but because she'd decided it wouldn't own her. She tapped the screen and opened her contact list. Martin Grayson blocked. Lana T, no voicemail, blocked. The silence afterward was clean, cold, but cleansing, like the air after a blizzard. She slid the phone across the table and turned to her notebook. January 25th, 10:02 a.m., threatening voicemail received from Lana. Implication of physical harm. Language, "He's not stable anymore." Logged and saved. Then, she emailed the audio file to Aaron with a 2-word subject line, "Next move." The reply came fast. "Uploading it to the court record now. It'll support the criminal charges and reinforce the civil case. The judge will see the escalation. You've done everything right." And beneath that, "We're almost there, Edna. Hold your ground." She read it twice before closing the laptop. That night, Dolores showed up with 2 covered casserole dishes, a half-empty bottle of boxed wine, and a mission. "Tonight we don't talk about that man," she declared, setting the table with the determination of a field general. "Tonight is the Warm Again dinner, first annual. You're hosting. You survived the freeze. Time to celebrate." Edna opened her mouth to protest, then smelled the baked mac and cheese. She closed it again. By 6 o'clock it was just the two of them, candles lit, space heater humming in the corner. A gentle golden glow spread through the living room. It was the kind of warmth you didn't buy from a utility company. It was made from survival and choice. They ate in near silence at first, then slipped into laughter that started soft and turned sharp, the way old friends do after finally exhaling years of tension. "I swear," Dolores said, refilling her wine, "if that boy ever shows up again, I'll hit him so hard with my handbag they'll find my retirement coins in his teeth." Edna chuckled. "That bag weighs at least 12 pounds. 12.5, Dolores corrected proudly. The two women clinked mismatched glasses. The heater buzzed in approval. The next morning, Edna stepped onto her porch with her robe pulled tight and coffee steaming in her favorite mug. World's okayest mom, a gag gift from Martin in one of his rare good years. The flowers her neighbors planted hadn't bloomed yet, but they were still upright, dusted with frost like tiny promises of something better. She leaned on the railing, breathing in the snow-laced air. The street was quiet. No truck, no movement, just the whisper of wind and the distant hum of traffic. For once, her world was still. Until Dolores knocked on the window, waving her phone like a beacon. "You've got to see this," she called. "Lana's at it again." Edna stepped inside and followed her to the couch. Dolores scrolled through her feed to a new post. "You all believe what you see online. None of you know what really happened. We're being harassed, silenced, lied about. I lost everything because of a bitter woman and a lawyer with an agenda." The comments had already turned. "You abused her. She's the reason you had heat. Don't rewrite history. You're lucky this isn't jail time, too." One reply read simply, "Let her be. She earned her peace." Dolores sighed. She really doesn't know when to quit. Edna didn't reply. She opened her phone and took a screenshot of the post, then forwarded it to Aaron with a caption. New post. Defamation continues. He replied 5 minutes later. Already filed. Every word she types builds your case. Let them talk. You're protected now. Edna stared at those last 4 words. You're protected now. For the first time in a long time, she believed them. That night, she turned in early. No texts, no voicemails, no pacing outside, no shattered lights, just a clean, warm room. She fell asleep with the heater buzzing softly and her notebook still open beside her bed. But sometime just past midnight, the porch motion sensor pinged on her phone. She blinked awake and checked the camera feed. A figure in a hooded coat stood just outside the gate, facing her window. Then slowly, deliberately, the person raised something in their hand. The lens caught the glint of metal, and the video feed froze. The courtroom was warmer this time, not because they'd fixed the heating, but because the weight Edna carried for years was no longer pressing on her chest. She sat in the front row beside Aaron, wearing the same navy coat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The courtroom was smaller than the last, more intimate, less spectacle, but that made it harder for the liars to hide. Martin entered late. He looked like a collapsed version of himself. Same coat, but threadbare now. No tie, no Lana, just his court-appointed attorney and a stack of manila folders he didn't seem to recognize. Edna didn't look at him when he entered, but Dolores did. She sat behind Edna with arms crossed, her expression unblinking. If Martin had looked in her direction, the look might have singed his eyebrows. The judge entered promptly at 10:02 a.m. All rise, the bailiff called. The judge adjusted her glasses and spoke clearly. After full review of submitted documents, video evidence, financial records, and witness testimony from both law enforcement and the plaintiff, this court rules in favor of Ms. Edna Grayson. Aaron didn't move. He simply looked down at his notes and exhaled. The judge continued. Mr. Martin Grayson is hereby ordered to pay full civil restitution in the amount of $11,302.41, plus interest and legal fees. He is also subject to a permanent restraining order effective immediately and is barred from opening any lines of credit, loans, or financial accounts under his name or any other for a period of 10 years. Martin's head snapped up. You can't do that, he muttered. The judge barely acknowledged him. Additionally, this court finds sufficient grounds for the defendant's actions to qualify as civil elder financial abuse. A formal civil penalty of $5,000 is assessed. Martin's mouth opened again, but this time even his attorney didn't look at him. Then the judge paused, flipping a page. One more matter. She glanced at the side table. Ms. Lana Thompson was found complicit in the concealment of financial abuse, online defamation, and attempted interference with judicial proceedings. While not present here today, her employment verification for a pending job background check was returned incomplete due to court record flags. Aaron leaned over and whispered, "That's why she didn't show." Edna didn't respond. She just sat still as the weight redistributed itself, no longer crushing, now stabilizing. The gavel dropped once. Court adjourned. Outside, the air was crisp but calm, not a storm in sight. Aaron handed her a sealed envelope, his voice light. Certified court ruling. You keep this somewhere safe. She turned it over in her hands. It felt heavier than paper. Officer Dent approached a moment later in plain clothes, coat zipped up to her chin and boots dusted with salt. Congratulations, she said. I've been on the force 12 years. Never seen someone document this well. You set a blueprint, Edna. I didn't want a blueprint, Edna said, her voice soft. But now it exists, Dent replied, so someone else doesn't have to break alone. Then she saluted, casual but with meaning, and walked toward her cruiser. Dolores waited on the courthouse steps. She didn't say anything at first, just pulled Edna into a long, quiet hug. No one's ever freezing you out again, she said. Not while I'm around. Not ever again, Edna echoed. They walked side by side toward the car, snow crunching beneath their feet. It didn't bite anymore. It just reminded her that she was alive and standing. That night, the mailbox held no threats. Just a letter from the Department of Consumer Protection, notification of freeze implementation, Edna Grayson, protection lock, enacted. Duration, permanent. Scope, all consumer reporting agencies. Status, secured. She read it 3 times, then folded it with precision, placed it in a fresh file folder, and tucked it into her drawer behind the notarized affidavits, the police reports, and every page of her handwritten notebook. After, she walked out to the porch, with a blanket draped over her shoulders. The tulips were starting to green beneath the frost. She didn't hear the truck anymore. Didn't need the camera alerts. But she kept the porch light on, not out of fear, out of defiance. Her phone buzzed once more. An unknown number, no message, just silence. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because now the silence was hers. The new furnace clicked on with a soft whir that sounded more like dignity than heat. It had arrived on a Tuesday, installed by a team of techs who didn't rush, didn't mansplain, didn't question why every document had her name and no one else's. The invoice was clean, the financing, hers alone. The ownership, undisputed. "Welcome to Warm," one of them said before stepping out into the snow. Edna stood beside the sleek metal housing in the basement, fingers grazing the edge like it was something sacred. There had been so much cold, not just temperature, but silence, dismissal, the kind of chill that sinks into your bones and tells you you're not supposed to fight back. Now warmth filled every vent, every corner of her house, with one unmistakable message: "This is yours." 3 weeks later, Edna sat behind a folding table at the Duluth Utility Help Center, stapling flyers for the Winter Relief Rebate Program. It wasn't glamorous work, nothing flashy, but she liked the pace. The people who came in didn't ask for much, just clarity, someone to explain forms, translate jargon, listen. She knew the power of being listened to. "You're good at this," said Linda, the volunteer coordinator. "You ever do intake work before?" Edna smiled gently. Number just life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A new comment on the blog post Dolores had begged her to write last week. "How I fought back in a house I once paid for." She hadn't expected it to take off, but the local library's community newsletter linked it, and suddenly Edna Grayson had readers, and they had opinions. One comment simply read, "This could have been me. You helped me see that." It was surreal. Dolores kept calling her viral. Edna kept calling herself lucky to be alive. That evening, Edna brewed chamomile tea and sat in her recliner with her laptop perched on a tray table. The glow of the screen lit her face softly as she reread an email from Aaron. Elder Justice Coalition, Spring Forum, panel request, "When no one believed me. Would you consider speaking? We'll pay travel if needed. You'd be our keynote." She hadn't responded right away. Public speaking was never her thing. Even as a young woman, she avoided microphones the way other people avoided root canals. But something about the title gnawed at her in a good way, like healing itched before the skin smoothed out. So she wrote back, "Yes, I'll speak, not because I enjoy it, because it matters." The event was held in the community college auditorium, a modest space with plastic chairs and coffee too strong for anyone under 60. Edna wore the navy coat again, this time with a pin that said, "Every dollar matters." Dolores sat in the front row and mouthed, "You've got this like a stage mom with a secret flask." Edna approached the podium with her notes trembling slightly in her hands. She didn't read them. She just spoke. "I thought silence was safety, that not rocking the boat would protect me, but the boat was already sinking, and the hands I thought would save me were stealing the life raft." A pause. The room held its breath. "I'm not here to be inspirational. I'm here because justice only works when someone refuses to back down. And I'm not backing down." Thunderous applause followed her off the stage. Later in the hallway, a young woman with streaks of purple in her hair stopped her. I've never told anyone what happened with my uncle, but after today I might. You gave me courage." Edna didn't flinch. She simply took her hand. "You already had it. You just needed a mirror." That spring, the tenant board elections took place for the Neighborhood Housing Advisory Council. Edna's name was on the ballot. She didn't campaign, didn't hang signs, just kept showing up, library meetings, budget forums, coffee hours. By then, her blog had become a resource hub. A quiet revolution lived in her inbox. She found out she'd won from a handwritten note in her mailbox. "Congrats, Chairwoman Grayson. You were the only name everyone circled." She stood on the porch, rereading it, the tulips in full bloom now. That evening, she made a pot of lentil stew and set out 2 bowls, one for herself and one for Dolores, who knocked a few minutes later with a stack of magazines and a smug grin. "They mentioned you in Neighbor Watch Weekly." She held it up. "From silence to strength, how Edna Grayson changed the story." Edna laughed, a soft, surprised laugh. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed once. A new email from the Department of Corrections. Subject line, "Inmate contact request, Martin Grayson." The wind screamed outside like it had something to prove. Icicles lined the porch railing in sharp, glassy rows. Snow gusted sideways, rattling branches and windows. February in Duluth didn't ask for forgiveness. It demanded resilience. Inside, Edna sat curled into her armchair beside the heater, wrapped in her thickest knit blanket, hands cradling a chipped mug of black coffee. The space hummed with steady heat, glowing orange from the electric coils, casting soft shadows across her living room. Dolores sat nearby, knitting something in mossy green. "They say it's the worst cold snap in 5 years," she said, eyes on her needles. Edna took a slow sip. "Not in this house." They both smiled at that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward or empty. It was full of memory, of survival, of what didn't have to be said anymore. The phone rang. Dolores reached for it on the coffee table. "Aaron," she said, handing it over. "His timing's better than my ex-husband's sense of humor." Edna answered. "Hey there." Aaron's voice came steady through the speaker. "Just got the confirmation. Charges stuck. State closed the case today." She didn't speak at first, just closed her eyes. "He pled out," Aaron continued. "No trial, no appeal. He's got restrictions for the next 7 years. Can't touch credit, can't leave the state without permission. And that civil judgment? On his record permanently." Edna exhaled, slow and even. "It's done?" "It's done." A long pause stretched between them. "I opened a new savings account yesterday," she said. "In your name?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Only mine." Aaron chuckled. "Sounds like the most secure account in Minnesota. Maybe the whole Midwest." They hung up without saying goodbye. The kind of silence that meant there didn't need to be one. That afternoon, Edna wrapped her scarf twice around her neck, buttoned her coat all the way up, and stepped outside alone. The wind hit her first, brutal and biting, but she didn't flinch. The path to the lakeside was frozen solid, snow packed down by tire tracks and boot prints. She walked slowly, her cane tapping once every few steps. It wasn't about the destination. It was about the ground beneath her feet. Every crunch of snow was a sentence finished. Every breath in the cold was proof of something long fought for and finally won. When she reached the overlook near the water's edge, she paused. Lake Superior stretched wide and indifferent beneath her, blanketed in snow-crusted ice. It didn't care about her history or her name, and somehow that made her feel freer than ever. She stood there for a long time, staring out, letting her lungs fill. No shadows behind her, no eyes watching from cars, no ghosts whispering from within. Just wind and snow and the warmth inside her coat. Back home, Edna sat at her laptop and refreshed her blog's comment queue. A new message had arrived from someone she didn't recognize. Username, Daughter of Strength. I printed your story and gave it to my mom. She kept it under her pillow. She's pressing charges this week. You're a hero here. Edna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she didn't reply. Because maybe the point wasn't to respond. Maybe the point was just to be there when someone needed the light to come back on. She saved the comment into her archives, closed the laptop, and stood. She turned off the space heater and moved into the kitchen. The house retained the heat now, not just from vents and wires, but from the rebuilding, from the claiming, from knowing that no one could unplug her life again without consequence. On the hallway wall hung a framed quote Dolores had given her after the court ruling. You survived the cold. Now you define the climate." Edna ran her fingers across the glass. She didn't hear from Martin again. Not after declining the contact request. Not after the judgment. Not after the photo from the car. He disappeared back into the system he thought would never touch him. But Edna? She stayed right here. Furnace humming, notebooks shelved, neighbors planted, savings growing. One more blog draft sat open on her desktop, half finished. It would wait. For now, she walked to her window and watched the frost drift down the glass, catching light from her porch lamp. And with a quiet strength in her breath, she whispered, "He cut my heat one January. I made sure his comfort stayed frozen forever.